All right, so I wanted to talk about this with Ian, which is last week we talked about Harry Potter. Last week we talked about James Bond, and they were talking about the odds on the new casting for James Bond and who they thought it was going to be. I thought Regé-Jean Page was actually a fair enough choice for it, though I would go with Henry Cavill if he kind of slimmed down a little bit and didn't look like a pro wrestler with that upper body. But I love Henry Cavill. But now the questions coming up is after No Time to Die came out and Lashana Lynch played a character that essentially took over the role, like the code name of 007 in that, but it doesn't make her James Bond. They have come up with the idea of like, should James Bond be recasted as a girl, which 10 years ago would have been laughed at, like, what, Jamie Bond? That's hilarious. Now you have no idea whether that's going to happen.
Well, I think Ana de Armas' take is based.
She is. So she says, No Time to Die's Ana de Armas has concise feelings about whether or not, thank you, about whether or not James Bond should be female. The spoiler alert, she does not think that James Bond should be a female.
There's no need for a female Bond. There shouldn't be any need to steal someone else's character, to take over. This is a novel, and it leads into this James Bond world and this fantasy of that universe where he's at.
And the thing about that is, it is a fantasy. James Bond is the quintessential male power fantasy. The idea that men want to be him, women want to be with him. That's what James Bond is. Okay. What dude does not want to go around the world doing cool spy stuff, saving people's lives, and having sex with tons of chicks. And having sex with tons of hot women? That is a very, very prototypical male power fantasy. But in the current year, women aren't allowed to be women in Hollywood. Women have to be facsimiles of men, meaning that you don't give women roles that make them powerful women. You give them roles that make them substandard men in these
what
books.
Would you see as a role that empowers women anymore? Like, it's so confusing because...
Okay, let's see. In the show Reacher, there is a female character in there that is a cop that is very good at her job, but she's not portrayed as a superhuman. She's not seen as on the same level as the character of Reacher, who was an Army intelligence officer, as well as a Special Forces soldier, but she is good at her job of law enforcement, and she does lots of research in that show and helps him in ways that seem complementary to his skill set, not just... And when she gets in fights with people, she's not beating up dudes twice her size. Right? Even that, I would say, is kind of a stretch to think that most women would see that as what they want to do. I would see it more as roles of protective mothers, or it just wouldn't be in the action space most of the time.
So I'm wondering, obviously you don't think that they should gender swap James Bond, but you think it would be fine if they race swapped him?
James Bond is not James Bond if he's a girl. James Bond can
but
still
some
be James
people
Bond
might also say his race is just as integral to who he is as his gender, because those are his immutable characteristics. That
argument could be made. In the books,
if the race can be swapped, where do you stop? Where do you draw the line?
In the movies, they don't often... I don't think I've ever heard them refer to James Bond as... none of the traits of where he ends up has to do with him being Caucasian, right? It has to do with him being... Now, there is to say, he is of British, not nobility, but, he's I guess what you'd call landed gentry. His family comes from wealth. In where he's from in the books, from what I understand. Okay. So in that case, yes, it does. But they don't really reference that a ton in the movies, from what I understand. Maybe a little bit in Skyfall and in the earlier ones. But for the most part, if it's just an action movie of a guy who is, and I understand that a lot of people don't like this take on it and would prefer that it's that all the traits remain the same. But to me, if it's a dude and it's about a guy's power fantasy, then I see that as integral to the character. I don't see swapping out so then they make him a woman. Does that mean that the character is now bisexual? Is the character now gay and is also into women, or is the character into men? How does that change the dynamic between a female spy going around? Is she picking up like beta dudes who just like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, of course, I don't think it makes sense either, but what I'm saying is you either need to go all or nothing. If you're going to change one thing about him, that one of his immutable characteristics, then there's no line that can be drawn.
If I read the books, right, and they didn't mention what race he was, I wouldn't care. Right?
Did they mention his race?
I don't know.
I don't think that's something that needed to be mentioned at the time that they were written.
And Ian had mentioned before, like he said, if you're doing this on stage, obviously this is a little bit different. Like on stage, they cast the best person for the job, and that's how they do it. And that's why I was wondering what your take on something like this was.
You would have a lot more creative freedom in casting with theater. Theater's really like experimental, but for movies and TV that live forever. You do, like you were saying, if you're doing a movie about an ex-slave from the South, you don't make it a white guy. If it was referencing someone that was a black person, you cast a black actor. But like with James Bond, I think the two things that are immutable about the character are that it's a guy because he sleeps with a lot of women, and women don't sleep with a lot of guys. That's not like the fantasy, and that the age, like it's not a kid.
And
you got to have like a middle-aged.
And
he's
British,
yeah, for sure.
Those are the like if like I said, I understand what you're saying. Like you have to go all or nothing, but to me, I'm willing to make those compromises. There have been examples in the past. Nick Fury in Marvel is portrayed by Samuel L. Jackson. That in the comics was not a black character. Never bothered me. Don't care.
I think Idris Elba, is he British?
He is.
He'd be a phenomenal James Bond.
I push back on that one. He's too old. He's too old now. Not if they're going to sign him for 4 movies. He's in his mid-50s already. He's too old.
He's so badass.
Yeah, I've rewatched The Wire once a year. He's fantastic in The Wire. He's Luther is one of my favorite shows of all time. I think he would make a fantastic Bond villain.
He'd be a great Bond villain.
He was he played a bad guy, like a super villain type character in the Hobbs and Shaw movie, the Fast and the Furious spinoff.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I saw
So I think he could do that very, very well. I just I understand that there's a lot of purists that disagree with me on the concept that his race doesn't matter in this case. But I do think that the things that matter the most are that he's a male and that he's British.
Okay. I guess when you're saying it can't be translated into a female power fantasy, you're saying that, but it can't be communicated to like the larger culture because all of there's literally a documentary asking what is a woman. If all of that is thrown up in the air and left to be questioned, then we don't know what a male fantasy is or a female fantasy is or what women want, what men want.
I think we do. I think they're just constantly getting people to try and question.
You could have a female
that's
British
why this
spy.
is even a conversation.
Yeah, you could build a female British spy. That'd be a cool character, but it wouldn't be James Bond.
Yeah,
James Bond is like a womanizer. That's kind of part of his character. Every movie he's sleeping with different
Is
women.
that supposed to be a flaw of his, or is that kind of just ingrained in the story?
It used to be considered a heroic attribute in the 50s and stuff, but now it's kind of like smart. I mean, it's a little, you could consider it a flaw, but they don't write it to be a flaw in the movies, which they could start doing.
I don't know.
They toned it back in the Daniel Craig ones towards the end. He kind of gets back into it in Skyfall, but like I said, he falls in love with Vesper Lind in Casino Royale, and then eventually ends up with I forget the Ledoux.
It's almost embarrassing. Like every woman he meets, he gets sexual with. Like in like it's like a villainous woman meets him, she wants to have sex with him.
Famke Janssen in Goldeneye with the squeal, the leg.
Cannot resist. He's irresistible. I mean, that's part of his thing too. He's irresistible charmer.
He is. It's and like you said, it's interesting that you mentioned that too, because you're right. Like they want you to question whether it actually is a fantasy, whether what's real, what isn't, what is a woman, what this and that, and it sucks.
It's a relevant question.
The average person knows that this is that when these movies do well, that's because the average person just knows what this is, but because it's very hard to articulate, even now, doing it for right now, I'm having a hard time articulating why exactly it works.
Yeah.
But you just know that it does.
Quick correction: he doesn't get every woman. Q is immune to his wiles.
Wait,
no, it's not Q. It's Q's the dude.
Moneypenny.
Yeah, Moneypenny.
Yes,
just can't get Moneypenny. He wants her though.
Oddly enough, or
does he get Moneypenny? I don't know.
The actress who played Moneypenny in the Brosnan one's name was Samantha Bond, so that would I always get this screwed up. And her real name was Samantha Bond.
His boss too. What's her name?
Well, that's M, but that's
M.
That's been men and women.
Oh yeah,
because Judi Dench was the first woman to play M,
and she was great.
Yes, she's my favorite version
fantastic.
of that character. I'm not a huge fan of the Ralph Fiennes version of that character, but that's just because I really checked out of I loved Skyfall. I think that was the last great Bond that Daniel Craig did. And Casino Royale is, in my opinion, very close to a Bond masterpiece. But in general, I like Judi Dench in those.
I saw Goldeneye. You guys see, that was the one. I mean, I played the Nintendo 64 game religiously.
Yes.
And wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Alec Trevelyan, all those,
So I would have loved if they had made. There was a character. Michelle Yeoh played a character named Waylon. That was her name, Waylon. In Die Another Day, which is a really, really good James Bond movie, which is honestly more relevant now than Tomorrow Never Dies, where it's an evil media baron
yeah, I have seen
who
that.
who like literally like commits crimes so that he can report them as so he can change the news. Like he has
What year was this?
97.
That's funny.
He doesn't like it's so funny because it's like he's an evil media baron when he's talking about I want print, I want news, I want TV, radio. Never mentions the internet, and that's how early the internet doesn't get mentioned at all.
It was what's the guy's name? I'm looking for this actor, Jonathan Pryce. Yeah.
Yep. Who is he's a hilarious one. Like if you want like my example of like Sally Richardson Whitfield, people that are awful on Twitter, he is a riot on Twitter if you like to disagree with.
Jonathan Pryce.
Yes, he's very interesting on Twitter. But Michelle Yeoh played Waylon, which was a very, very. I don't remember if I believe she's Chinese in that movie. I remember. Forgive me, I can't remember if the character's Chinese or Japanese. But in that movie, she's a spy and very competent, very good at her job. They could have easily made a spin-off about her, and it would have. I don't know if it would have done well then, but if they had done that now, that would do very, very well because it was organically fit into the original premise, and then you build on that. Right?
I think if you turn Bond into a woman, and you would have to keep the womanizer thing, so it would be very sexual and erotic, and it would make the movies too erotic.
Yeah.
It'd be too much female sexuality because you can't have her getting it with a bunch of guys. That would not make sense. It wouldn't be cool.
And or they would try to portray it as that, and people wouldn't like it.
It wouldn't resonate.
And then people would be like, "Oh, you incels! You just don't want women to be able to." Yeah, it wouldn't translate, like you said. And when things don't work organically, they don't translate. Then the media gets mad and says it's because of bigotry.
Now I almost want it to happen just so that we can talk about it and rage about it.
Yes. All right. Do you want to do super chats?
Yes. Goofer Trooper said, Ian, when are you coming back to Washington? I think I saw you last time you were on vacation, but I didn't get to say hi.
Gooper Trooper, Washington State. I don't have any plans right now, but I was actually thinking about going to Washington a couple nights ago.
Interesting.
So maybe.
Steven Igorovich said, Mary, you suck at answering your DMs, so I have to super chat you to remind you of our photo shoot, but Ian's looking pretty good too, winky face. We're thinking something with big giant mushrooms, fairy tales.
Perfect.
I don't know.
What are you doing?
Nothing is set in stone. This guy is just thinking about doing a photo shoot.
Love the Amanita muscaria, the red mushrooms with the white dots on them. Love those.
Araftas Austet said, got a bonus at work, thought I'd share with PCC and Ian.
Wow.
Well, you're actually sending it directly to Hannah Claire's bank account.
Yes.
So you might want to retract that statement. Goofer Trooper said, Nick Fury was black in the comments before Samuel L. Jackson. The Ultimates had a black Nick, and it's the same universe as Miles Morales.
Okay, yeah, so not...
People are talking about Leslie Jones. I don't want to see this name anymore.
Yes.
Caper2X said, Brett, point of order, Reacher is military police.
I think I said military intelligence, but he's right, yes. Military police.
Waffles Sensei said playing Odd Job was cheating.
Yeah, really. He was so short. It was you just shoot right over his head. He's talking about GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. And Jaws was just like a penalty because he's so easy to hit because he's so tall.
Cosmic Surgeon said, I'll be okay with race swapping when it starts going both directions. It is as necessary for 007 to be white as Shaft is to be black.
Yeah, like I understand 110% everybody's disdain for that practice. I found that as long as they don't start talking, like as long as they don't make the movie with Regé-Jean Page, right, and then start talking about him being a different race in the movie, I can separate it and not think about it, as long as they don't draw attention to it in the movie and make it part of the story, which would feel inauthentic to the character.
Bad app, I'm not reading that.
Oh no, that's actually what he's talking about. That's a line. I'm assuming that's what he's referring to. In the remember Denise Richards, who we're going to talk about at the end of the show today?
Yes, I do remember.
She was in a James Bond movie called The World Is Not Enough, where she plays literally the world's least believable nuclear physicist in history. No, she works with nuclear.
funny.
Yes,
She doesn't look like one.
And no, she does not. And her character name is Christmas, I think Christmas Jones or something like that. And then at the end, James Bond, while they're in the throes of passion, makes the joke, "I thought Christmas only came once a year," which may go down in history as the worst joke of all time.
What year was this?
99.
The Bond, they love the titles of their movies is like Thing is not
This.
this.
They're all.
I was just thinking that.
They're all like that. What's what GoldenEye was different. GoldenEye
was really unique, dude. Alan Cumming was incredible. It was like his breakout role too. He was so good in that movie.
Yes.
As Boris.
And very, very slimy.
Yeah.
In that.
What a cast.
Martin Campbell directed that. Martin Campbell actually launched 2 successful Bond relaunches. He did Daniel Craig's first movie. He did Casino Royale, and he directed GoldenEye, launching Pierce Brosnan's career as James Bond.
Man.
Jonathan Harris said Idris Elba could have been a good race swapped James Bond. The main issue, which would make it fail, is that they would try and shoehorn some racial lines into it. All James Bond has to be is a man and British.
I agree 100%, 10% with that. And like I said, I don't believe in current year, if I'm going to give everyone who disagrees with me the benefit of the doubt, that I understand that Hollywood would not be able to resist including some type of line that would call attention to it and instantly take you out.
Man, when I read scripts, and I've been reading a lot of scripts in my life, when you read the character descriptions at the beginning of the script, when they're like, John, 35, black, I'm like, oh, God, who cares what color this thing is? Like, it doesn't... John, 35, man, like that's all you need. And then you just fill it in. Or John, 35, you just fill it in. You don't need to like pre-decide what they're going to look like. You're not making a Christmas tree ornament.
Gold Macro said 007 is a code name, and I don't think James Bond is even his actual name, so I've got no problem with a switch, especially since they keep upping the time frames of the movies, unless he's immortal, lol.
I believe that James Bond is his actual name. At least they talk about it in Skyfall. I believe that his name is actually James Bond, so... that always seems.
The only reason I'm saying I don't want them to race swap is because they're doing it consciously.
Yep.
If it were an organic decision that you're actually finding the best person for the role,
like Nick Fury, I think I haven't seen the movies, but Samuel Jackson's such a good actor that I'm excited to see him, regardless of what role it is.
Yep.
I just think they're doing it race consciously every time.
Yep.
And it's annoying. Cosmic Surgeon said, "So you're okay with Shaft being white if they don't call attention to it?" LOL.
I mean, is there no racial component to the character of Shaft? Like, is it important to the characters, to the storytelling of the character? I have not seen that.
I don't think it matters if it's important to the storytelling of the character. I think it's about staying true to the design of the character.
The Shaft, I never saw the movie, but the idea was it was a dude, 1971, black dude. What was the guy's name, the actor?
Samuel L. Jackson played him recently.
Well, Richard Roundtree in the original one. And I don't know. I mean, it was about like that culture, I think, in New York City or wherever it took place. I don't know if it has to be.
I don't know if it's a one-to-one comparison, I guess. Like
what this is about, I'm sorry to just like call out what the elephant in the room is. It's that they want less white people in movies. That's what it's about. So if they're race swapping James Bond, it's for that reason. It's not because they're looking for the best guy for the role.
There is no way, there is no aspect in which Hollywood is doing it because they want to cast the best person for the role.
So I don't even want to entertain it.
I never got the vibe that it was less white. It was more diversity.
But that's the cloaked, like, flowery language in front of it.
Yes.
But ultimately, I think that's what it means.
Yeah. Like I said,
I hope I'm wrong, but...
We as being people in the know understand that that's what their motivation is, so it's different for us because we're aware. But they're right. Like, I don't believe for a second that if they did this, that they would be doing it because they cast the best person. And it annoys me when they pretend like they do. Maybe I'm just longing for a time back in the day when I wasn't aware of this stuff going on, and it didn't bother me as much. So you could say that maybe I'm in a little bit of denial there. But I do understand the argument from both sides.
Waffle Sensei said, "Hey, Bad App, just make your super chats say, 'I'm not going to read that,' and Mary will read them." That is a genius life hack for you.
Life hack. then
And
one more from
Hobbit said race swapping is a slippery slope, even if done well.
Absolutely. No, they're absolutely right. Listen, I understand that I don't have the most popular opinion on that here, so that's good. I love having the discussion. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.